Welcome to House of Horns to a special edition of House of Horns, actually, Gilbert, because Aaron Donald announced his retirement. I texted you. I was like, hey, do you want to do something on this? And then it's been a busy day for the Rams. So you were at UCLA to see Latu's his draft. He's going to be someone who's going to be in the draft. But Gilbert, just give me your first impressions. Where were you at? Were you shocked when you heard the announcement by Aaron Donald that he was retiring?
Yeah, so I was getting ready to go to UCLA for the pro day for Latu. I don't live too far away, so I decided to go. And then the phone is buzzing, alert, 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 and it's like Aaron Donald retirement. And first, I thought like, what happened? Like, didn't he just kind of restructure his deal to create some cap space, and then he retires? And it's like, well, okay, not too surprising. He wanted to. What's up, James? Man, I saw you out there at UCLA. So, and check out James's story at Orange County Register, LA Daily News. A good feature on Latu, who could possibly land with the LA Rams. So check that out. But yeah, so I was, wondering, okay, what happened here? And then I'm like, it's not too surprising. Aaron Donald has talked about retiring. When they won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, he got a new deal. I think it was 2 to 3 years. So I think there was 1 year left on the contract there. So, but then after that, so okay, you know what? Go out on top, do it your way. You won a Super Bowl. You're a first ballot Hall of Famer. And the only question now, Victor, is he the greatest defensive tackle of all time? I think he is the greatest defensive tackle of all time. I just wrote about it at SportsIllustrated.com.
Yeah, I think he's up there with Reggie White. I think not a lot of people from your generation, Gilbert, saw Reggie White. So,
Isn't he more
Reggie,
of a defensive end though?
yeah, he moved around. I think you're
That's
right.
the thing. That's the tricky part. I kept trying to find
Yeah,
players who just stood in the middle. And for Aaron Donald,
yes,
who was such a great
yes,
player to his
you're right.
credit, he
Yeah,
could easily have gone edge rusher, and he kept
yeah,
playing inside. So, I always thought about that. How would he do on the edge? But
yeah.
John Randall came close to me because he got a bunch of sacks, but also moved in and out, but mostly from interior. You could probably answer that question. I mean, that one better than I could, but I think he was mostly inside.
Yeah, no, he is the greatest defensive tackle. I think number two by a wide margin is Warren Sapp. I mean,
Yeah.
what
Okay.
Warren Sapp did when he was with the Buccaneers was great, but then once he moved to the Raiders, he wasn't as good, so he kind of lost some of that. I think he retired, kind of like what we saw with Aaron Donald. I think he would have been up there, but I just and he had way better talent around him. I mean, he had John Lynch. I mean, all around great defense, and Aaron Donald. I think in terms of like kind of what you see with Jerry Rice, like how much of a gap there's been between Jerry Rice and the next receiver in terms of the records. I think that's the same way that you look at Aaron Donald and the rest of the defensive tackles.
Yeah, and I get it. Like back in the day, they weren't counting sacks. What 1982 when they first started counting sacks. So I started digging like Alan Page from the Vikings, Joe Green from the Steelers. So you don't really know the numbers, but and people always say it's a different era. It's not as pass happy, but to mostly like when it comes to just watching pass rushing skills, like Aaron Donald has it. Like when I went to the pro day for Latu, I asked Latu because they kept asking about, who do you like to watch, and he's saying a bunch of edge rushers, but he mentioned Aaron Donald, who does not play on the edge. So that tells me it doesn't matter where on the front he was. Whatever technique you want to call it, 8, 5, 4. I lost track of how many they are. He could play, and that's what made him so great.
Yeah, no, and I mean the numbers are there. 10 years. What was it? 8 Pro Bowls, three-time Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, everything was there. I mean, and just to see everybody talking about it today just tells you how great of and what's even makes him even more greater, Gilbert. I was thinking about this as well as we were kind of preparing to, once we decided we were going to come on and talk about this, was he wasn't a guy that was out there promoting himself. He led his promotion, I guess. He did it on the field, and I think that's what makes him such a great player. I mean, just for example, today, I mean, nobody leaked it. Nobody had any idea. Yes, he's giving hints, but like the fact that it was on a Friday news dump, like he could have done it at the beginning and made it all about himself. He didn't. He's like, hey, thanks to the Rams. When I first saw it, I was like, well, that's kind of weird that he's thanking the Ram fans, and like he's just throwing out a post, and then next thing you know, you just start seeing all the reports that he, let the Rams know that he was retiring, which they were in collaboration, the Rams, and that's also credit to the Rams. They kept it, they kept it a secret for a while, and that's a credit to them. And I know a lot of a lot of players around the league. I know saw that.
Yeah, before I want to talk about how this affects the Rams, for 2024, I want to keep going a little more on, appreciating the greatness of Aaron Donald. So, yeah, again, he hinted at it after winning the Super Bowl, doing the ring sign here, give me my ring, and being so vital in that Super Bowl. Uh, Wild Man Samurai says 80 was one of one, the best defensive tackle to ever play the game. And yeah, and I know I think we could say that, without hesitation, going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But what I also wrote about Victor is just like, obviously when we talked about John Randall, Warren Sapp, like there's been guys who've been very good from the interior defensive line, but I honestly stopped calling them defensive tackles, the guys in the middle, because when you think about defensive tackle, you think about big guys who are 340 pounds, run stoppers, just kind of being asked to push the pocket and then let the edge rushers do all the pretty work, or the get all
Or
the
the
credit,
linebackers, yes.
or the linebackers. Now I think the game is different. Look at how much money Chris Jones has just made. Justin Matabuke, Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, Deron Payne. That position has changed, and I think it started with Aaron Donald. That impact of being so versatile, athletic, powerful, speed, everything you want in an edge rusher coming from the interior. Aaron Donald raised the bar, raised the standard in the competition, and everybody got paid for it. So when you leave the game better than when you first got there, that shows the impact that he created. So he's not the most talkative, he's not the most flashy, but when you watch the film and there's three guys on him, two, three, four, whatever coverage he got, and he still made an impact, that really changed the whole landscape of the interior. I call him interior defensive linemen, not defensive tackles anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, I always think about, players in sports or just in football. If I look at football and I say these are the guys that change the game, and I can tell, especially on the defensive side, the first guy that comes to mind is Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor is the greatest, defensive player. I don't care, who you talk to, whatever era, they're always going to be, because he changed the linebacker position. Then you look at cornerback or defensive back, you think about, someone like Deion Sanders, and how he was more about promoting himself and about the flashy plays. And then now you go over to Aaron Donald, and as you talked about, Aaron Donald changed the game for the interior linemen, and now they're getting paid because of it. We just saw Christian Wilkins get, a bunch of money. You said Chris Jones, and I think that's his lasting impact too, of why, and this is to James, his question is, seeing how Antonio Gain was snubbed as a first ballot, is there a chance that Aaron Donald isn't a first ballot guy, or does the Super Bowl help secure that? He's going in first ballot. There's no way he doesn't go in. I think part of the reason Antonio, there was some question marks with Antonio Gaze, is he wasn't a blocker. He was pretty much a, he was more of a catching tight end, and that kind of, there's nothing you can, there was no weakness in Aaron Donald's resume that you can, what are you gonna say, that he got hurt, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I guess the only debate with Aaron Donald is calling him the greatest defensive tackle, and even he kind of already has the argument. So when you are, for sure the best defensive tackle of your era, when you are making 10 Pro Bowls every year or an All Pro every year, three Defensive Player of the Year awards, like the resume speaks for itself. The only question mark is like, is he the greatest defensive tackle? That kind of says a lot, because with Antonio Gates, you got to think about, Gronk, and you think about Tony Gonzalez, you think about Shannon Sharp, so many tight ends, and it's like, okay, like to be a first ballot, you have to be like for sure, without hesitation, one of the greatest, like in like top five. Now, I'm not saying Antonio Gates should wait. I think he should have made it, but
Yeah,
there are just too many kind of question marks for like just to compare these two examples where Aaron Donald doesn't have that many. Besides, he might be one, maybe two, or maybe the greatest defensive player of all time. Doesn't matter about
yeah,
position. And going off your comparison with Lawrence Taylor, that's a great example, because honestly, Victor, I don't know what the hell to call people now. Outside linebacker, edge rusher, defensive
Yeah,
end. Like we have no idea because Lawrence Taylor came in and changed the whole linebacker position. So I'm getting to the point where I just want to call everybody a pass rusher. Like unless you're like a big nose tackle where your job is to stop the run, I'll call you nose tackle. Everybody else, I will call you a pass rusher. And then the guys inside linebacker, if you're for sure a silent and sideline guy, you have to rack up 100 tackles every year. I'll call you inside. But I'm getting so annoyed of all these different, what the hell is a defensive end or an edge rusher? Is it the same thing? Or an outside
yeah.
linebacker or 3-4 or 4-3? That's because guys like Lawrence Taylor and Aaron Donald did so much being so versatile.
Right.
They changed the outcome of the way you play the defensive front.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of this is because you want to get paid, and so you want a position. If you play, as a pass rusher, you're gonna get paid more than you would a defensive tackle. And as we just said, Aaron Donald has changed that now, where defensive tackle are getting paid, just as much as defensive, ends or pass rushers or whatever you want to call them, as we just said. And it's kind of like what we've been seeing in the NBA, where it's becoming a positionless,
Yeah.
league. It's the same thing with the NFL. I think eventually it's just going to become, hey, if you can provide, if you're a lineman, a defensive lineman or a linebacker, that's what's, you're just going to be positionless. As we said, the linebacker position and the safety have changed so much because of how the offenses in the NFL have changed, and now you're going to see, guys who can do it, be a special player who can, and this goes back to talking to what's his name, from the linebacker from the 49ers at Super Bowl media night. I asked him, I said, do you think the linebacker position, is going to change? And he said, look, it's going to evolve. And so that's the same thing that Aaron Donald has done for the defensive tackle. It's made it evolve to now. Not only are they getting paid, but they're being used differently because
Yeah.
of him.
Yeah, and like that's why the linebackers, the inside guys, are making a comeback because they're being asked to do more, like play coverage, stop the run, be a pass rusher, and those are the guys that survive, like the Fred Warners you're talking about, and the Dre Greenlaws and the Rokon Smith. So the more you do in defense, the better. But nobody could do, I guess you could do maybe more than Aaron Donald, but you can't do it at the highest level that he has. And when I was working on that column right now, anytime I saw like elite company that Aaron Donald was in, is always like a Hall of Fame edge rusher, and it's like it's hard to meet those numbers like edge
Yeah,
rushers, and to be up there and to do it in 10 years. And I think the first time he missed a game from injury was like maybe last year or 2 years ago. I forget. Yeah, 2 years
yep,
ago. Remember in
yep.
2022. Unfortunately, I had to cover that year where Aaron Donald had to miss a couple games. So maybe I am bad luck. But he won the Super Bowl the year before that, and just being consistent, longevity, available. Just remember, he was an undersized guy from Pittsburgh, the number 13 pick in 2014. And Victor, there was a point where people were saying Khalil Mack or Aaron Donald, who is better from these two guys? And they're supposed to get paid at the same time. And there was a debate. And I don't know where Aaron Donald just shot up and kept going, to the point where he became the best defensive player overall, where he surpassed JJ Watt, probably the best edge rusher of the last 10 years. So when you're doing that, and it's gotten to a point too where people don't even watch the film. It's like, yeah, let's do a defensive tackle ranking. Put Aaron Donald number one, even though you haven't watched one single snap of the Rams, I bet, because he's getting double team, triple team. You don't even look at the stats because I also wrote like there's probably one player you could call a game breaker. Like we use that kind of loosely. Yeah, game breaker, game breaker. There's probably one person you could for sure call that. That's Aaron Donald because he changes the outcome of how you plan on Saturday night. You're having a nightmare because you don't know how to plan for that. And the game comes like, oh crap, he's blowing up everything that we're throwing at him. So Kyler Murray had a tweet out there saying, shout out to him, but he's probably happy because Aaron Donald was always in the quarterback's faces. Uh, the offensive line, there was double team, triple team, whatever you threw at the guy, you just couldn't make it work. And it's pretty remarkable that he still had 111 total sacks over his career. And John Randall got 137 and a half over 14 years. So if he would have played 14 years, he probably would have surpassed John Randall.
And that was the other thing too. I mean, he wasn't about going after stats. I mean, he could have, but I thought like the biggest example, I thought, Mina Kimes, when she tweeted out the like, I think it was four pictures of him being triple, quadruple, and double team. I mean, that just tells you where his career was at. Like, and as to your point, the you know that that was Aaron Donald. You had to prepare someone, and that's always been my thing with guys who are worth of that Hall of Fame selection. If someone either was a a game record or somebody that they talked about like, hey, we have to make sure that we neutralize this guy or else this guy's gonna beat us. And there hasn't been a lot of guys like that. I mean, defensive guys that had an impact, were in the Super Bowl. We've seen it now in the last couple of years with Chris Jones, and then but Aaron Donald was that first one
Yeah.
against the Bengals, and now you've seen it with Chris Jones. And like I said, there's always one that comes first, and Aaron Donald was that first defensive tackle that impacted a play in the Super Bowl, and now it's going to become more and more of a norm.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, like maybe he doesn't care about stats, and maybe he could have played more on the outside more. Like I remember that game against the Cowboys 2 years ago, where I got to cover at SoFi Stadium, and they put him out, on the edge because the left tackle was a rookie and Tyler Smith against the Cowboys. He got 2 sacks. I'm like, you could easily just put the guy on the edge. It's still going to be a monster and rack up a bunch of sacks. But I think he knew he was more important inside. Like, let the guys like Leonard Floyd and Von Miller. I'm blanking all the names, but there's a bunch of edge rushers who benefited on the LA Rams, even St. Louis Rams back to 2014, 15. Then they moved over to 16 to LA. But like I think he was so important in the middle. And there was times that he was so good. I remember it was a Greg Gaines saying last year,
Yep.
like he was just doing so much work that like when he was out for those games in 2022, hey, now I can actually maybe do some work here. I could probably get a couple sacks here. Maybe I could do my part because he was commanding so much attention. And it's like, like even the beneficial side, he was disrupting the rhythm for the Rams practices, and he brought it every day in practices, Victor. Like I remember in 2022 when I was there, he threw somebody's helmet because he was so fired up about it in a practice in August when nobody really cares,
Yeah.
and it's just a competition level. And he wasn't kind of a rah rah guy, but he led by example. And again, he raised the standard for everybody on his team, the opponents, and then even the fellow defensive linemen.
We got Delbert Sagaro says simply thank you, AD. Enjoy your much deserved retirement with you and yours. And I was gonna ask you, we saw with Megatron, we saw with Barry Sanders, you saw guys retire early, and I think 10 years is a good career. I don't think he retire, way, but he went out on top and he has a Super Bowl. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think had he not won that Super Bowl, I think it would have been a little harder for him
Yeah.
to, walk away. But now let's get to the business of the Rams and how
Well,
this
and one
affects.
one more point, and he's
Yeah,
also
yeah,
not he's not chasing anything. Like Barry
oh,
Sanders, he was chasing the rushing title of
right.
all time, and people are like, "What are you doing? You're so close." Aaron is like he just accomplished everything in 10 years,
Yeah.
and they just said so much.
Yeah, and now like I was gonna get to is now we get to what happens with the
Yeah,
Rams now. I mean, Colby Turner is in for a big, he's gonna have to fill some big shoes there, and I thought he was really impressive as a rookie, but I think he kind of passed the torch on to him, and I think he kind of knew that this might be his last season, and he took Colby Turner under his wing.
yeah, and like again to the conversation of how versatile these interior guys are like, when it comes to being a pass rusher. Like Kobe Turner, like was one of the top guys in rookie guys in sacks, right? Like so, he's doing his part as a pass rusher. He's also helping out as a run stopper. So I'm not saying he's going to be Aaron Donald, but
Yeah,
they found a nice gem in Kobe Turner. We're like, you know what? You have a building block. You probably have a blue chip guy right here. I think it's okay for me to leave. And that's even another kind of credit to Aaron Donald. He probably saw that. He saw what they did, last year. And Aaron Donald could have been like, you know what? Yeah, I'm ready to retire, but like this is a fun group. This is a young emerging group, and I want to be a part of that. But you know what? I think he was felt like he was content, and why wouldn't he? And then and he left the Rams in a good shape after a playoff season. Like he could have easily retired a year ago when he's like, or even complain like, hey, what the hell's going on, Les Snead and Sean McVay? Who are these kids I'm playing next to on defense?
yeah,
Why is everybody gone? I don't remember him saying a peep, and he actually
yeah.
embraced it. He took him under his wing, and maybe he was more of a leader last year vocally when he needed to. So that was pretty big for him. And honestly, like, I'm not too familiar with what's going on with the restructured contract. I'm guessing he was owed some money, and maybe the Rams were saying, you know what, we don't want to take your money because you're retiring. We want to do this for you because you've been so great to us for 10 years or something there. But for him to get paid, hey, can you do this a little bit to help us out right now? That's what it feels like to me. So they do have some more cap space. And I'm also, I think people are probably wondering like, why didn't it spend money on a defensive tackle in free agency? It still could, but I don't think you want to go reach because there's not that many of them out there, or at least guys who are like, worth to bet on for a big contract. So you might look for a defensive tackle to help out Kobe Turner in the draft.
Yeah, and there's a kid from Texas who kind of reminds some people of Aaron Donald. So I
Yeah,
mean,
is it
that's
Byron Murphy? I think.
yeah, Byron Murphy. So you have another Byron on there. Might as well add with the Jacksons. I mean, now you have three Jacksons on the team, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean that'll be something to look at now. That's another thing. But to your point, the Rams freed up 9.2 million by restructuring Aaron Donald's contract. So he did another favor on his way out. Instead of saying, "Hey, I'm going to keep all this money and hey, I'm going to go enjoy retirement." He actually helped out the Rams and he freed up 9.2 million by. And I thought, like, when I first heard that was weird because so the morning begins, right? And then you start, hearing about the Rams freeing up money. Then so first it's the Rams free up 9.2 million by restructuring Aaron Donald's contract. Then comes Joe Nobums accepts a 8.25 million dollar pay cut to return for 6 million in guarantees, Gilbert. So now the new cap hit for him is 11.6. It was 12. So now you free up around 8 point something, right? So now his salary is 5 million. And then you're like, okay, cool. So what's there's more, this coming on the heels of last night, the Rams agreeing to terms with safety Cam Curl,
yeah.
one of your guys that you had as a top 50 free agents. And so you're thinking, okay, the Rams are up to something. And then they like, then you get this announcement about Aaron Donald and him retiring, which he deserves. But it was just it's been a crazy 24 hour for Rams fans. So I mean, I guess for you, like what has this been for Rams? Should they just be happy about Aaron Donald retiring, or is there some concerns now with because
Yeah.
I thought he was coming back, Gilbert, and this will be the last thing I say on it. I thought he was coming back just because from everybody I've heard is he sounded like he was ready for this season.
Yeah.
Right after the Lion again, they lost to the Lions in that locker room. He looked rejuvenated, but do you think he comes back? Like, is there any way he comes out of retirement? He says, "Hey, you know what? I thought about it," and he pulls a Tom Brady.
I guess there's always a chance, but he doesn't seem like that type of guy to kind of go back and forth. And he also gave them a heads up before free agency. That's what the reports are saying. So maybe it's kind of like, you know what, guys, like I don't want to mess up your off season. And I know I'm taking my time here. So here's what I'm gonna do before the free agency starts. So it feels like he thought about it for 2 months, and that's actually a lot more time than. That's why I was thinking he's gonna be back because it's already March and he hasn't even officially
Yep.
announced anything. And I think even the coaches and GM was like hinting like, yeah, we don't know, but I think we're expecting him back. So it felt like okay, it's gonna happen. So I don't know. He doesn't seem like that guy who's gonna miss it. I think he enjoys being with his family, his wife and kids. So, we'll see. But in the short term, it does hurt the Rams a little bit. And I was loving the free agency, but now knowing that Aaron Donald won't be there, it's kind of like, oh, okay, that you got some work to do here. But they are freeing money up, like you mentioned with Joe Nopum. Taking a pay cut, moving the money around for Aaron Donald. Like honestly, for me, if they're gonna make some more moves in free agency, I would do it at edge rusher because there's still guys like Chase Young out there, Jadavion Clowney. There's a few guys out there. There's more guys available at edge than interior. And like you mentioned, there's a couple guys in the draft. So now you start shifting your number 19 pick. Like, is it going to be an interior defensive lineman? There's two guys who might be worthy of the pick. Or maybe you trade down to the second round, get a couple more picks, and get that defensive tackle in the second round. Or you get a cornerback. There's still some needs at cornerback. I would like to see him get a tackle too as well. So, hey, maybe that money could be for Tyron Smith still. I keep putting that out there. So, edge rusher or Tyron Smith will be my way to go, but get that defensive tackle in the draft for sure.
What are your thoughts on the signing of Cam Curl? I mean, did you like that signing? I know I saw what's his name. Go ahead. Let me get your thoughts. Let me
Yeah.
find the.
So when we were doing the top 50 rankings for free agents at SI, like I didn't really know where to put him. And it's kind of like I can't rate this guy too high because he was part of a really, really bad commander secondary. And they also had Kendall Fuller. They had a first round pick and a cornerback. I'm like, why were they so bad? But again, it's Washington. They were a mess there. They were trading everybody out. They didn't even have any edge rushers, so that was more pressure on them. So I kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt, and I said, all right, I didn't put him in the top 50. A lot of people seem to like his game, and he's versatile. You know, he could play it in the box. He could kind of, I don't know how good he is as a coverage guy, but he's a nice kind of chess piece to have. And they were missing that last year when they lost Jalen Ramsey. Everybody thought Kobe Durant was going to take that step forward to maybe be like the star DB, and he never really did that. So Cameron Curl gives him more an opportunity to move around. And also they lost Jordan Fuller, who went to the Panthers. So
Yeah.
I think they upgraded with Cameron Curl. He had more upside. He was actually, I think they were both 7 round pick actually. So maybe one was a 6 rounder, but they were both in the end day three who actually ended up doing so well. So I think they upgraded as safety. They still got Russ Cheese and Quentin Lake. So I like the move because it needed more help in the secondary. But now you have Cameron Curl and Darius Williams. Secondary is looking a little better than last year.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, Chris Harris, a former uh, defensive back, said that he was his number one safety out there.
Really?
That he was, yeah. So I mean, and
Over Xavier McKinney, huh?
yeah, yeah. So that was his guy. He's saying so. I mean, he had him as he said he thinks it's a steal for the Rams. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. Yeah, continue to send your comments in. We will get into what you have to just say, Michael Armenta. We'll get into the Jimmy G stuff right now, actually. So Gilbert, a couple more things before we get to the Jimmy G signing. Linebacker and special teams player Christian Roseboom returns on a 1 year deal. So you get your number two linebacker back and special teams guy. So they didn't want to pay him. They didn't tender him because they didn't want to pay him $3 million, but he's back on a cheaper deal. So that takes care of your number two and a special teams player. And then lastly, Gilbert, we got this news a couple of hours ago. Jimmy G signs with the Rams on a 1 year deal. He will miss the first two games because of a suspension. But just give me your thoughts. The Rams did what they say they would. They were going to get a veteran backup to for Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, even though Jimmy G is gonna miss the first 2 games, it's still better than we did a year ago when they waited to what, week 8, week 9 to have a decent backup quarterback. So they are ahead in 2024, and I like it because Jimmy G is no longer a starter. He probably shouldn't have been a starter a year ago. The Raiders took a chance on him, and it wasn't even like that's the thing. Like it wasn't even like it was injury for him. It was performance. He wasn't playing that well, and also who knows what happened with Josh McDaniels? Maybe that was
He
kind of
was hurt though, Gilbert. He had a bad foot. I mean, I'm
he's
not trying
playing
to make.
playing bad on it, but I don't know.
Yes, I think he'll be healthy. I think part of the reason he took those substances is because he had a bad
Yeah.
foot, and that's what I've read from people who from the B reporters. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. He'll finally be healthy because he had foot surgery like this time last year, Gilbert. So it'll like I think that affected him. He was never healthy with the Raiders.
But even when you talk about Jimmy
Oh
G,
no,
he always
yes,
finds a way to get hurt.
yes,
And
yes, yeah,
I
you're
I
right.
like it better as a backup, but remember he
Yes,
was a backup for the 49ers and he was a backup for Trey Lance. And what does he do? He immediately gets hurt and then Brock Purdy comes
yes,
in. So that's the only concern I have for me. But he's a quality, backup quarterback. If he's healthy and when something happens to Stafford, or hopefully not, and he's being asked to play, you should feel good about that. Like that's a good backup, but he's a hit away from being hurt, and that's always a problem. So like, do you get a third guy? Obviously, we kind of wrote off Stetson Bennett already. He hasn't been around. Maybe you draft a guy
I think they
and you
will
let him
draft
you
back.
let him develop. That way, you don't rush him like a Stetson Bennett and like whatever happened. But get Jimmy and get draft a guy to kind of protect yourself.
Yeah, especially with all the picks that they're getting. They're getting five. I would assume they're going to use one of those on a to draft a quarterback. I mean, why not? Like I've said this. If you have an opportunity to draft, you should draft a quarterback every other year and try to develop him. Look, you have a Sean McVay who's known as a quarterback guru. Go and draft one. Like, look, yeah, Stenson Bennett didn't work out. You took a shot there. I get, I get it. It cost you a fourth round pick, but it doesn't mean that you don't go back into the draft and try to draft one, especially now that you have Jimmy G as your backup, who's going to miss the first two games. You just need a quarterback, and Now there's even Todd Gilbert. I saw, I think either yesterday that I think it was the Eagles who are trying to push. I think it was either the Eagles or the Ravens are trying to push to make the number three quarterback active um, for game in case of an emergency.
Yeah, why not? It's a very important position, and we don't want to see these terrible games and something happens to the quarterback. So, and also going off of Sean McVay, like he saw the rise of Kirk Cousins in Washington. Like nobody expected Kirk Cousins to be the guy. They drafted RG3, but they took two quarterbacks in the same draft, and it turned out to be a benefit. I'm sure Sean McVay is well aware of what's going on with Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers. They got lucky because they drafted Brock Purdy. So sometimes you got to, get these quarterbacks in what, day three? Or if you don't want to force it, maybe some day two picks here. That's a little high for me. But get a quarterback and just develop them, or one that has experience, 4 years starting or whatever,
Yep.
3 years starting, and just have something in case of emergency. And like you mentioned, that maybe a possible rule change where like it could benefit.
Yeah, I mean, just stay away from guys who've been in college for 10 years, and
Yeah.
maybe you avoid that Stenson
Yeah.
Bennett thing.
Anybody over 25, it's a red flag.
Yeah. Somewhere around, like, I get, and that's one of the things I keep getting asked about. We saw it in the comments. People, they're like, well, what kind of players are the Rams looking for? They're looking for guys who are mature, guys who've been there for 4 or 5 years, as Kirk Morrison told us. That's why they drafted Puka Nakua, and guys like that. They're looking for those type of players in the draft. So, and now Gilbert, let's get to our comments here. I want to go through them because I want to make sure we get them all in here. So we have Michael Armenta says, "Sad day for Ram fans. The goat AD number 99. Thanks for always playing hard and bringing it every game. Glad you were a Ram your whole career. Can't wait." All right, Gilbert. I have a question for you. Now that Aaron Donald is retiring, there's one guy left from St. Louis, a player on the team. Do you know who it is?
Rob Havenstein.
Then there you go.
And
There's
I'm not
one
even sure
left.
about that. Is that really like that's correct?
Yes, yeah.
Uh,
There's
what year was he drafted? Was it 2015 or something?
it was
15?
14 or 15, but like I saw that stat today, and they were
Mm,
like, "Oh,
okay.
that means Rob Havenstein's the
That
last
was my
one."
guess because he's like the oldest guy, and the other one would be Stafford, but he wasn't around, obviously.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
got it right. All right.
yeah. There you go. All right, Delbert Salgado. So begins the career of DC Shula. It's going to be interesting. Let's have a great defense draft with young, fast, young bucks in Snead and McVay. I trust. And to Delver Salgado's point here, Gilbert, that's a tall task now. Now you don't for Shula, to take over a defense. No Aaron Donald, so there's going to be a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, and real quick before I answer Delber's question, and shout out to Delber, always supportive of the channel here. Michael brings up a good point. Like he was a Ram his whole career, so sometimes when players stay too long, like they end up going somewhere else or they're being forced out, and you don't want to see that. So that was cool that it worked out for him to be with the Rams for 10 years and always be a Ram. So. All right, going to the Delber, yeah. I wonder how much that played a factor in the hiring of the DC. Like maybe thinking like, what if AD's not here? Who's a guy who could quickly adjust and handle that without having an AD here? So that makes me like, wonder how much the scheme is going to change. Like obviously, like you can't ask Kobe Turner to be Aaron Donald, so they got to get more guys in the middle there. Maybe Michael Hoyt goes back inside because maybe they get some more edge rusher. Who knows? But they better have a good backup plan. I'm sure they've been thinking about it, and I think Chris Sheila is going to be a big part of that. That's why he probably won this job here.
Yeah, and I mean, I started thinking about some of the guys that Aaron Donald got paid, and you talked about great gains. He just got a new contract with the Bucks too, so I mean,
Ah,
it just tells you a lot of the dudes who got paid because of Aaron Donald.
Nation Robinson got a nice little
Yeah,
check too.
Sean Robinson. Yeah, like just dudes. You're like, oh yeah, he was with the Rams. Oh yeah, he got paid. Michael Armenta, Rams should have kept Wentz, not acquire Jimmy G. I wonder why they didn't bring back Wentz. I
Yeah.
don't know what his market is. Um, he did really well that last game, so I'm just surprised.
Yeah, he won
You
that
know,
game. Gave us
yeah,
Lions versus Rams in the wild card because of it.
yeah. So I mean, we'll always have that Carson Wentz jersey, Rams jersey somewhere. I'm sure someone has one of those
That
out
makes
there.
me wonder, like they saw him every day at practice. Like they not really like what they saw from him. Like that's kind of a red flag if like it's Carson Wentz for Jimmy G. Like it's kind of the same thing for me, but if they went for Jimmy G, that's something right there. So
Yeah, and probably Jimmy G comes in cheaper because he's already getting paid by the Raiders.
good,
Like
yeah.
he's getting his money, so he's probably like, "Look, I can go and." I think it's an attractive job to be a backup, as we've seen. I mean, Baker Mayfield, another guy who got paid. Baker Mayfield just got paid, and he was a backup. So I think Carson Wentz was looking for the bag, and now
I
Jimmy G
I
comes in, and
I wonder if they were in on some talks for Kenny Pickett, like they because that the news came after Kenny Pickett got traded, right? Like there's probably like, you know
yeah,
what, he's out there. Like, what do you want? Like a sixth rounder, maybe? And then he went to the Eagles. Like, who knows?
they gave him they gave him a fourth round pick from what I saw. I was like, a fourth round pick for Kenny Pickett. I was
Yeah,
like,
I
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's because he's a former first round pick. Like there might be some value there. I don't know.
I don't know. See, and this is one of the things that I sometimes forget about Gilbert is the fact that agents have a lot of power when it comes to trades, and there's some agents out there who are like, hey, I want to make sure that my guy gets traded, gets good value, so that way it looks good on paper. And sometimes GMs will throw them, they'll throw them a favor there if they can get some of those guys signed. So I don't know,
It's
just
also like a lot of mind games because a lot of times when you say like a fourth round, fifth round, it's a pick swap. They just moved up like 20 spots, and the other team kind of has the same pick, but in a different round, 20 picks down. Like it's
yeah.
a lot of pick swaps this year, and it's making people believe these players are worth more.
Yeah. All right. Next one says first down card says Aaron Donald is better than Chris Jones and Miles Garrett.
Yeah,
I
like I
would.
say, we're talking about like today's game. You know, it's tough because Chris Jones was awesome last year and Miles Garrett won the Defensive Player of the Year. Like, but I could say that, like, maybe there's some debate. I could say Aaron Donald retired as the best defensive player in the NFL. I kind of hesitate because those two guys are really good, but if we're talking about career and best of the best, elite, prime versus prime, it's Aaron Donald. But if you're asking about 2024, there's some debate. But again, like I mentioned, he raised the competition level and now the gap is finally closing. And I think that's a good thing or a special thing that Aaron Donald did.
Yeah. All right, Delbert Sargato confesses that watching the combine, QB Devin Leary from Kansas should be available. And you're going to see a lot of names out there that I'm sure there's going to be some guys that we haven't even talked about. I mean, we're not big college guys. We don't watch because we're concentrating. You're concentrating on the NFL. I'm concentrating on the Rams and some of the NFL. So it's kind of hard for us to do both. But now as I'm like starting to do a little bit more research, you start hearing some of the names, and I don't want to give people the wrong information and say, yeah, like
Yeah.
we saw these guys. I'm with you. Like Kevin Leary's going to be really a good option for. I haven't seen him.
I
I'll
think
be
for
honest.
those type of guys, maybe you could ask us in a couple of weeks because right now we're still in free agency mode, and then
Yeah,
you dive in. Like you like I feel like at least for me, the combines where I'm finally getting to know some of these guys, and obviously you know about the top guys and you watch them film, but it's very like surface level. For me, after the free agency frenzy, that's where I started digging a little deeper. Maybe watch some film. I don't watch too much film. I'm not a tape grinder, but I also do my research. I see what the experts are saying, people who actually do this for a living, and I go from there.
yeah, and I do the same thing now. Like especially now that knowing that the Rams do really well from the third round to the sixth
Yeah,
round. I kind
you
of
got to
want to,
know that stuff.
yeah. So I kind of have to pay attention now. So I'll start, like you said, in a couple of weeks. I'll start my research, and I'll go from there. And then that way we're prepared for when we do our draft coverage. One more here from Mike Armenta. Besides Dono and Youngblood, who else is on the rounds? What's his name? Deacon Jones. He was the guy who came up with the sack. I mean, you got to put Deacon Jones up there. I think he came up with
Mhm.
the slap. What is it? I forget. But yeah,
Is
Deacon
he
Jones.
talking about just like maybe some defensive players? Obviously, Jackie Slater, offensive lineman, could be maybe
Yes.
one of those
Oh,
guys.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, that's the thing. Are we talking? Yeah, because we're talking about LA Rams. I
LA
would.
Ram. Okay, so I was gonna say so.
Yeah.
No Kurt Warner, no Marshall
Yeah.
Falk. Kind of okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
then Jackie Slater for LA for sure.
Yeah, Jackie Slater. You got Flipper Anderson. There's a lot of guys there. Like I said, Deacon Jones. He was. I think he's the one that termed the name sack. Like he's the one that came up with the name sack because
Hmm.
it wasn't recorded.
I
I
had no
remember.
idea. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Maybe Cooper Cup in a few years.
Yeah, Cooper Cup is another guy to kind of keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, I remember the Rams went to the Super Bowl. I think it was against the Steel. They played the Steelers. Vince Ferragamo was the quarterback. So there was a lot of guys out there that people forget about. Because they went to St. Louis for all those years. I always forget too that the St. Louis lost two football teams. It wasn't just the Rams. It was the Cardinals.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah,
moved to, yeah.
yeah.
Roman
There was a
Gabriel's
there was a
another
baseball
one.
team. There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah,
So it's a
yeah.
baseball team, St. Louis Cardinals, and a football team, St. Louis Cardinals.
Yes,
Okay, interesting.
yeah. Yeah, they moved in 1988 to they moved to Phoenix, the St. Louis Cardinals. So,
Yeah. Every time I
yeah,
Google Cardinals, I have to put Arizona because the St. Louis always
yeah.
comes up first. So I don't know what that says about the football team.
All right, Gilbert, before we go, you were at UCLA. What were your impressions? Is there any names to kind of keep besides Liatu Latu?
Well, we were all there for Liatu Latu, so I'll touch on Latu because I thought for sure it was gonna be like a guy that the Rams could get. Now I don't know because they might use that money on edge rusher and they might need to get a defensive tackle. But and also Latu mentioned he hasn't formally spoken to the Chargers or the Rams for people interested on him in the LA side. So I don't know what that means. There's times where players say, I never spoke to that team. I was surprised they drafted me. So you don't
Yep.
don't kind of just say okay, no Latu, but he's a very, he's kind of like we had Nick Shook on the show not too long ago, and Compas on the beat, and like you could see why he said he's one of these kind of tweener guys, like kind of skinny but long, athletic, like a Leonard Floyd. Like, and I saw him in person. I'm like, yeah, like it doesn't seem like your typical like massive edge rusher, but he's slim, long arms, and also very quick. So I don't know how much you could see from like just going around the freaking what are those things called? I don't know, the little pads there, the
Yeah.
giant pads there. So that's pretty much all I saw. Hey, but he asked me, I mean, I asked him, hey, like, Aaron Donald retired. Like, what did you like about his game? And he said, that chop that he has, like, I like using it, and that so he has that in his game too. So things like that. He has a lot of toolbox for getting past the size where he doesn't have a lot of weight, but he's fast, he's quick, good hands. So that could be something there. And obviously the injuries are kind of scary for Latu, but those mostly came at Washington. When he went to UCLA, he was a monster. So he
Yeah.
racked up sacks and he did well in that defense.
Yeah, and like I said, he kind of reminds me of the path that with what happened with Jalen Phillips of the Miami Dolphins. He started at UCLA.
Yeah.
He medically retired, then went to Miami, got drafted in the first round, and now he's doing really good. He got hurt last season, but he was really good for Miami, and he was a big reason why they were good defensively there until he got hurt. Delbert says Latu or Verse if available.
Yeah, I think they're both similar guys too. Very athletic, and I keep seeing back and forth. Like some people like Jerry Verse, and some people like Latu. So I think the number one guy is a Dallas Turner, from
Yeah,
Alabama.
he's going to the Falcons.
It's
E
what it
every
seems like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's going to the Falcons.
So, but then again, people are also debating whether he's a top 10 pick, but also because the Falcons got Kirk Cousins, now they can focus on edge rusher. So it's kind of more for need. But I think those three guys are also kind of similar. So it's not the best class for edge rushers, but those three guys, I'm sure there's probably one or two that are also very up there. And when it comes to the first round,
Joaquin Quijada says, "How's it going, fellas? Reason I asked last time we spoke if Runner Donald would get an extension, I knew it. How did hit you guys both? I'll start, Gilbert. I was really surprised as we talked about, just listening to people in the locker room. Uh, the players, everybody kept saying, even Kirk Morrison said that he thought he was coming back just because of what he was telling people in the locker room. But things change, man. Like, sometimes your family comes first and you're just, you start thinking about training camp and you're like, look, man, my body, I can't get up in the morning like I used to. I've done this for almost, he was in the league for 10 plus. You put in all that time you spent playing football. So he's been doing this for 20 years since he, probably played in high school, college, and then the pros. So I understand. It wasn't a surprise, but I was the fact that it was such a Aaron Donald thing to do it on a Friday news dump,
yeah,
and the way he did it, it was and in Aaron Donald style.
I would like for him to have a press conference press conference. We could have more flowers thrown at him, but I don't think he's gonna do it. Like so, that is his style. On a Friday, just let me just tweet it out and move on. But it's a rough sport, the NFL, and you play 10 years and you're that well accomplished and decorated, and you're still playing at a high level. Like you want to go out on top. That's why I don't mind when Calvin Johnson, who was more beat up by the way, so he had to do it. But a Calvin Johnson or definitely a Barry Sanders comes to mind. Gale Sayers comes to mind. So these guys at the top of the game, like especially nowadays, there's more and more guys saying after 10 years we're good because we're seeing more research out there. Like you take so many head hits, like it could affect you for the long term. So it's just the way that it is. Like the NFL it's a game where like you have 4 to 5 year window, and then teams are going to say we're done with you. You're too old now. So they should probably have the same approach and say, you know what? Before I get too old, I'm gonna get my money right now, and then I'll leave after that after the second contract. If you're after that, you're kind of pushing it with all the hits there. So I know people don't want to hear that because they want to have their best player on the team every single year. But I think Donald played this up pretty perfectly.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's worse for the interior guys. I mean, they're getting hit on every, like at least with the edge rushers, you can kind of avoid, but you're getting hit by two, three, four guys on a play. I mean, that takes its toll. And look, one thing about Aaron Donald is he was always in the best shape out of anybody I've ever seen. That in to play a defensive tackle. I mean, I've never seen a defensive tackle look like the way Aaron Donald did. He changed, kind of like what you saw in golf with Tiger Woods, where he made, now you see golfers and they're all jacked up. It's the same thing. You're starting to see defensive tackles. They're like, hey, if I'm going to be good, I got to look like Aaron Donald or at least get close to it. And you're seeing guys be a little bit more fit, and try to have that agility. So I thought that's another way he kind of changed the game for defensive tackles.
Imagine being told most of your life like you're too small to play this position, and then you prove everybody wrong by being athletic, being powerful, at being having the speed, having fundamentals. Like he probably could have gone for another couple years because his skills are not just built on the physical traits. He was fundamental, savvy. He had all these skills, all the moves, like I mentioned when it comes to pass rushing. And I shouldn't just keep talking about pass rushing. Like this guy was great with stopping the run, and like you stop the run by commanding like three different people getting your attention. You're closing the gap because there's people focusing on you. So you got to run the other way or run this way. So, uh, for him, we just did so much for the game, and it's a good way to go out. And obviously, the Rams are going to be hurting in the short term, but I think they'll figure it out.
Yeah, and the other thing I was gonna say, I mean, they could have said, "Hey, we'll move you to defensive end, so that way you don't take that
Yeah.
much of a pounding." But it was just time. And then we got here just before we go, Gilbert Michael Armenta again. Just thanks for the special edition of Compas. Hey, thanks to Gilbert, he had the time, and he like as we when we first started the show, James Williams said like he was at UCLA today, covering the pro day there. So thanks to Gilbert who made time today. So
I
thanks to
say
him.
I say thanks to Jimmy G because I'm like, oh crap, there's a lot of news here. Let's just get this to it. We were gonna do
Yeah.
something kind of Wednesday and have something special, but AD's worth it, and also
Yep.
thanks to you, Victor, because you're here on a Friday making this happen.
Yeah, and then Joaquin Quijada again says, "Do you guys feel this draft will be defensive heavy, especially after Donald's retirement?"
Uh, I I, I don't want to say yeah because you get in trouble when you go for needs, but they do need a cornerback. They do need a defensive tackle. I don't know. Maybe you could use another linebacker or get a little more depth. But the talent they need more talent on defense. So I guess I'll answer this question saying yeah, Joaquin. But it wouldn't be a problem to get another wide receiver. Maybe get an offensive tackle. I'm okay with that too.
And now that they freed up money, they can go whatever way. I mean, I was kind of shocked when I saw the Camp Curl one too, because not shocked, but more surprised. But now you're starting to see like that should have gave us. I think I saw Jordan Rodriguez say. I think the last time that the Rams went out and spent for a free agent safety was Weddle in like 2018 or
Yeah, paying
2019.
for safeties and linemen. It's a new era.
It's a new era for the Rams, so that should tell you a lot. And then one other thing to and I know I keep bringing this up, but the fact that the Rams have five extra comp picks, that's gonna help them be able to go and try to stack up on defense as much as they want. We have Alexander H. Props to AD on retiring, but man, was hoping for one more year. he, if anything, opened things up for the defense, and also why Jimmy G thought they were holding on to Wentz.
Yeah, I guess people are not happy with the Jimmy G signing here, but I don't know. Like Victor, you mentioned, it could be a money thing, and maybe Jimmy G didn't have a market because of what happened last year and being suspended 2 games, and maybe Carson Wentz wanted more, or it could be a performance thing, and they just didn't see eye to eye. Like he did play well against the 49ers, but that was for the backup. So like, what did you really learn there? And yeah, I get it. Some people are probably were hoping that Aaron Donald will play this year, and maybe it would have been better if he had a retirement tour, like a final year, and so everybody knew it was going to happen. And you won't be caught off guard. But when he brings a Super Bowl, 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 10-time Pro Bowler, what maybe almost 10-time first team All Pro. I forget how many he has, but yeah, I think most people here are probably like, that kind of sucks. But then after a while, it's like, props to AD, like Alexander mentioned.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of saw this coming just because I think once he got hurt at the end of 2 years ago, I think he wanted to show that he wanted to finish out a whole season. And once he did that, and then playing with this young group and being a mentor, I think that was enough for him to say, you know what, that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and retire. Um, Opinion: Will Stafford restructure now, or should we talk to Kelly?
Maybe I saw that Kelly Stafford's on TikTok now. So Stafford, that Matthew Stafford is also on TikTok because she's always recording him. So maybe she'll talk about it on a TikTok or the podcast.
Part of the podcast. So yeah, so we'll keep our eye on and see if they'll restructure. But I think they have enough money now, Gilbert, to be able. I think they freed up between No Boom and Aaron Donald. They freed up around 20 million. So if they want someone like, let's say, a Mike Williams, a young, or they want defensive, like as you said, a defensive end, they can go and get two of those guys now if they want. So we'll see what they do, but I'm really intrigued. I mean, it's been a busy Rams. I knew this would be. I knew they were going to go after guys that not a lot of people heard of, which we've loved from the Rams, because this is how you should structure your team in free agency. You don't want to go, because you don't want to fix your team through free agency. You want to build it through the draft. And then
Hmm.
if you need to fill some needs, you do it with free agency. And the way they've gone about it has been really good so far. Like, that's why I was really surprised by the Cam Curl one, just because that's the kind of move that you want to make, and that was another good one. And so far they've done really well with those, like, under the radar moves.
Yeah, it's always tough to criticize a team in free agency, especially the ones that are not doing so much. Like maybe at some moves, but not too many, because it's always about the draft. The draft is where you get better. That's where you get the next star players, the cornerstone pieces, the guys are going to help you out for 4 or 5 years. So yeah, obviously you can always do more, but when you're kicking money down to the next year with Stafford or Donald or Cooper, like you get in trouble that way too. So
Yep.
they have enough money now. They've done a nice job with Jonah Jackson, Cameron Curl, even Jimmy G if you want to count them. A bunch of players, Kobe Parkinson. So, you know, they've done. If you put aside the Aaron Donald thing, I think they've done a good job. And you don't want to reach for a veteran, defensive tackle. I think it could be an edge rusher. I would not be surprised if Chase Young or just Davion Clowney is an edge rusher. But then you focus on the draft, and that's where you truly get better.
Yeah, and I've always like, that's one of the things about the NFL that I've learned, is the fact that, look, you can try to win free agency, but it's not going to get you anywhere. Even though I just saw from NFL research that the team that spent the most money, Gilbert, the last 5 years, they all improved by 3 wins or more. So so there goes my theory. I was like, okay, so you got to build this through the draft, and then not, you don't want to win free agency, but winning
Well,
free agency or spending the most money, it still kind of helps you win some games. Last year it was the Broncos, and they won. I mean, they didn't make the playoffs, but they improved by 3 games. So
yeah, maybe that's gonna be music to the ears of Jets fans, because I just saw Tyron Smith is gonna play left tackle for Aaron Rodgers. So
yeah.
there goes my pitch for Tyron Smith to play for
You
the
mean
Rams.
Vice President Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I guess so. So Tyron Smith is gonna be protecting the Vice President of the United States. So
There we go.
yeah, so but he's going over there, and maybe that helps him out. But might be a good place for us to end, Victor, because
Yeah,
I got
here, let me
probably
just
gotta.
get these in here. Thanks, fellas. Buenos por vida since 58. We'll be okay. And then one more. She says one more. Could this be a small Korean or ploy to get one more from the Rams? No, I think
I don't think so.
that's not the type of guy he is. So but Gilbert, this was great. You know, you wanted 30 minutes. We ended up doing 55. But hey, shout out to everybody who joined us, you know, from Delver, Joaquin, Michael, Alexander, uh, First Down Cars, James Williams. Awesome to see people in the comments on a Friday. This is usually, you know, you don't do good numbers. We have
Yeah,
311 people watching this episode. So thank you guys. As we said, we're still trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. The in the last week we gained 20 subscribers. Gilbert, shout out to them. It's been great to see people are enjoying our content. I, you know, nothing but positive comments that we're getting. We really appreciate that. Give us your feedback. We want to know how we can improve this show. We will do so. But Gilbert, you know, let's see what else the Rams will do. We'll be on. We'll let the people know when we'll be on again. But this was a great appreciation for Aaron Donald
yeah.
and the career that he's had with the Rams.
Yeah, and Alexander H, we're glad you made it on for the live stream. And we and shout out like Victor mentioned, people who jumped here on a Friday and it's last minute. So it's a good crowd that came out. And again, thank you for the extra subscribers. But again, if you've already subscribed, maybe tell a compa, be a compa about Compas on the Beat and House of Horns because we're so close to getting to 1,000 subscribers. So we're at 916, 917. So once we get to 1,000, we're gonna give away that Puka Nakua jersey. But we're ready to go, Vic.
Yes, we're ready to go.
All right, that's a special edition of House of Horns, an appreciation show for Aaron Donald, and we also talked about Cameron Curl and Jimmy G and a whole lot of topics related to the Rams. So, but it's time to go. Enjoy the weekend. On that note, ya nos vamos, pues.